Welcome to today's Explainer. Look, if you've been following the AI industry this week, you already know the ground isn't just shifting, it's practically experiencing seismic tremors right now. Today, we're diving deep into the massive friction points that have just erupted across the entire ecosystem this July. We're talking everything from totally unexpected enterprise billing changes to high-stakes global diplomacy, and of course, the regulatory fallout from some seriously scary autonomous threats.
$100? I mean, when I first saw this number, I literally had to double-check my dashboard. As of today, July 8th, just running a single, medium complexity, 2 million output token coding session, like say a standard multi-file refactor on Anthropic's Fable 5, it now costs exactly $100 in usage credits. No way around it. So let's jump right into this Fable 5 price shock and the resulting financial friction it's causing across the enterprise. When we map out the events of this 27-day timeline, it is absolute whiplash. Honestly, if you're a product manager, this is enough to give you gray hair. We went from global availability on June 9th straight into a total shutdown by the 12th because of government actions. Then, they kind of teased us, right? They restored a 50% weekly subscription inclusion on July 1st as a compensatory measure. But today, that inclusion is completely gone. We are now forced into a strict credits-only billing model for their Frontier tier. It is a planning nightmare for any team that relies on stable API behavior for their production workflows. And when we compare these session costs directly, the financial reality is just stark. At $100, Fable 5 is demanding exactly double the cost of Opus 4.8 for that exact same 2 million output token session. Double! And it's 5 times the introductory rate of Sonnet 5. If your Claude Code users hastily rebuilt their production workflows on Fable 5 last week, assuming that subscription inclusion would hold up, well, you need to audit your API routing literally today, or you're going to face a massive, unexpected credit drain. Zooming out from those micro-level API costs, we move to the macro-level global stakes, the UN AI power table, and the diplomatic friction brewing in Geneva. Following the broader UN global dialogue, today actually marks the very first formal meeting of the UN AI for Good Global Commission. And honestly, this is a fascinating structural milestone. We aren't just seeing diplomats talking in a vacuum anymore. For the first time ever, inside a UN governance body with a formal mandate, tech billionaires and industry executives like Mark Benioff, Jensen Huang, Andy Jassy, and Brad Smith are pulling up chairs directly alongside heads of state. We're talking Rwandan President Paul Kagame, alongside leaders from Estonia, Singapore, Nigeria, and others. It is literally Silicon Valley colliding directly with global geopolitics. And they're not just there to posture about frontier models either. The Commission has set a very concrete target, addressing the 2.2 billion people globally who still lack reliable internet access. 2.2 billion. It's a sobering reminder that before we can even begin to talk about global AI equity, we actually need baseline digital infrastructure. This is a massive, tangible goal doing something that our domestic voluntary frameworks just aren't designed to tackle. Which brings us to our third major friction point, the EU's cybersecurity hammer, and where regulatory friction collides. So, while Geneva talks long-term diplomacy, the European Commission just dropped their formal action plan on cybersecurity and artificial intelligence yesterday. And we know exactly what triggered this rapid response. Jade Puffer. Demonstrated just last week, this is not your normal malware. Jade Puffer is a terrifying new class of autonomous AI ransomware agents capable of operating entire attack life cycles completely on their own. No human direction required at each step. Just let that sink in for a second. This sheer operational reality of autonomous attacks has forced regulators into high gear. Because of autonomous threats exactly like Jade Puffer, the EU is officially entering the governance race by treating AI through a really strict dual lens. On one hand, they are aggressively pushing AI as a vital defensive tool, the only tool fast enough to detect, analyze, and respond to these cyber threats at scale. But simultaneously, they have to heavily regulate it as the core autonomous threat itself. It's an incredibly delicate balancing act between rapid adoption and intense restriction. And all of this tension leads us to our final area, the compliance collision course, and the very real structural cost of fragmentation.
Okay, this is where the headache truly begins for enterprise compliance officers. We are now juggling 3 completely uncoordinated global frameworks. First, you have the U.S. voluntary standards rushing toward an August 1st deadline, focused heavily on cybersecurity capability and pre-release review. Meanwhile, the UN process in Geneva is slowly building multilateral digital equity recommendations to feed the General Assembly. And then you have the EU Action Plan actively enforcing autonomous threat regulations based on their broader AI Act risk classifications. Different timelines, different legal authorities, and entirely different definitions of what actually constitutes a risk. This fragmentation is a massive, unpriced structural cost hanging over the entire industry right now.
To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with two critical questions to take back to your teams. First, are you actually prepared for the EU AI Act's content transparency grace period, which was just surprisingly shortened from 6 months down to a mere 3? Because those distant 2027 high-risk deadlines don't matter right now, this 3-month window absolutely does. And second, looking back at our first friction point, do you think Anthropic will cave and restore flat subscriptions for Fable 5 before their October IPO roadshow? Or will they stick to their guns and pitch this expensive, credits-only unit economic story to Wall Street? The reality of AI is shifting beneath us by the day. So what does this all mean for us? It means the only question left is your enterprise agile enough to keep up? Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.